Like we're on an elevator.
Many people are stranded every day because of their inability to drive a standard car. You could be in the same position if you were to be, renting out your car to somebody, or your car happened to break down and you need to get a rental car. You have to know how to drive a standard. What I plan to explain today is how to accelerate, shift gears, slow down, stop, and reverse, and also park. I compared with the Institutional of Mechanical Engineers on their Journal of System and Control Engineering on how this standard works and how I learned the manual versus what they learned, and it was about the same. So some of the different things with the manual. One thing is that you have a stick shift, you have a gear shifter. The other thing is that you have 3 pedals, the third one being the clutch. Now the first thing you want to do is first gear. You have to make sure the car's in standard, or in neutral. You're going to apply the clutch, or to start the car, sorry, and turn on and then release the clutch. You have to make sure the car's in neutral, or else whenever you release, it'll lurch forward, which could be bad. Now moving into first gear, to start off, you want to make sure the brake's on and release the emergency brake. Because if you don't hold the brake, the car will start rolling. You want to apply the clutch, place the gear shifter in the first gear, and then slowly release the clutch while you apply the gas. First gear tends to be the hardest one to start, or the hardest one to do. Everything else goes pretty easy. Now shifting from gear to gear, you're going to apply the clutch, change from gear to gear, first to second, and then release the clutch slowly. And the same goes through all the gears. Another cool thing about a manual is that although you do have the clutch, sometimes it can go out. It can keep you from shifting, but there is a way to shift without actually using the clutch, which is what I'll show you next. Alright, now I'm in fourth gear, and what you want to do, see my foot isn't on the clutch at all, but what you do is you find a certain RPM that the car works best at, which is where you're going to be able to get the transmission and the gearbox to line up to where you can change gears without actually using the clutch at all. Now you have to be able to slow down too. The good thing about manuals is you can use downshifting, which is what I'm doing here, going from 6th gear to 5th gear. It's the same thing as shifting up. You're going to apply the clutch, change the gear, and then release the clutch slowly. And what it does is it acts like a brake without actually having to use the brake. And it works all the way down through all the gears. You don't have to worry about, it'll slowly bring you all the way down, and here I actually come down to a complete stop by the time I get down to first gear. And then whenever you're stopping, you're going to make sure that the car is in neutral. You're going to apply the clutch, put the car in neutral, and release the clutch so that you don't do the lurching again. Now, once you've stopped, you got to know how to park. Whenever you're parking on a downhill slope, you're going to come in towards the curb, and when you do park, you want to crank your wheel to where it is towards the curb. So if it does start to roll, which does occasionally happen in a manual, it'll roll into the curb to where it won't roll down the hill or somewhere away from you. When you're parking uphill, you're going to do the same thing, come in, approach, but you're going to turn the wheel the opposite way to where the back of your wheel is against the curb, which will keep you from rolling down the hill. And then the last thing that you have to learn is how to do reverse. It's going to be about the same as first gear. You apply the clutch, and then you go into reverse, which my reverse is actually on the opposite side of most cars. And you slowly release the clutch while you apply the gas. Now the cool thing about manuals is that there is a thing that there's a lot of benefits to a manual. You can get better gas mileage. If your car were to ever die, the battery doesn't work, instead of having to get it jump started like most cars do, there's actually a way that you can start it on your own. If you can get a couple of people to push start, or if you can also find a downhill slope, will help. It will work. Now what I did here is I got on a downhill slope showing you that the car's off, and that you have to have the gear shifter in neutral, and then you release the brake. And I started rolling down the hill slowly. And then you apply the clutch, and you're going to put the car either in a second or third gear, depending on whichever you prefer. First usually doesn't work because it tends to get going too fast. Now I'm moving quite fast down the hill. You're going to release the clutch quickly, which is also called dropping the clutch. And what it does is it engages the engine and turns on the car, and then you continue driving just like normal. If I had to choose between a manual and an automatic, I'd definitely say manual. It tends to be a lot more fun to drive, and it's just better on gas and stuff like that. Driving manual can be pretty easy as long as you remember the basic steps: starting, stopping, reverse, parking. Just, you have to remember the essentials in order to keep it going. Now that you know how to drive a manual transmission, you won't get caught. Go around it.
You get a car?